Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us this massive stack of academic research and industry notes on AI marketing today. And I have to tell you, it completely flipped how I view brand transparency.
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty intense pile of data, for sure.
It really is. I mean, I was reading through it and I kept thinking about like watching a master magician perform this incredible illusion on stage.
Right, you're totally swept up in the emotion of it all.
Exactly. The tension, the wonder, all of it. But imagine if right in the middle of the trick, the magician just pauses, turns directly to you, and clinically explains the trapdoor, and the mirrors, and the sleight of hand.
Magic just instantly dies.
Right. Not because the trick was bad, but because that mechanical disclosure completely shattered your emotional investment.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to unpack exactly why that magician's dilemma is currently tearing apart modern brands in the age of artificial intelligence.
It really is like the defining crisis for creators right now. The whole digital landscape has fundamentally shifted into what the literature you provided calls the dead internet theory.
Yeah, that term is so ominous, the dead internet theory.
I know, right? But it makes sense because the cost of generating perfectly grammatical, structurally flawless content has just plummeted to near zero. So we're drowning in what the sources term AI slop.
AI slop, wow, that paints a picture.
It really does. I mean, artificial intelligence is inherently trained to produce the average of everything it has ever ingested. It is literally the world's most sophisticated median machine.
So when everyone uses it to maximize their output, average just becomes the floor.
Exactly. And the internet just floods with perfectly polished noise.
I was really struck by the historical analogy in your notes regarding the Gutenberg press.
Oh, yeah, that's a great comparison.
Like, when the printing press was invented, the scribes who copied books by hand, they didn't lose their jobs because there was a sudden oversupply of books. They lost relevance because their specific, highly specialized skill, which was just reproduction, was no longer
It
scarce.
just vanished overnight.
Right. And it feels like modern creators are staring down their own Gutenberg moment right now.
What's fascinating here is how perfectly that maps to our current reality. Because the new scarcity isn't production. I mean, we have infinite production now.
Yeah, we can generate 1,000 blog posts in a minute.
Exactly. What is scarce now is human judgment. It's lived experience and like the friction of actual human thought.
So the core theme we're unpacking today is how you, the listener, and the brands you build or support can survive this massive structural shift without alienating your audience.
Because the growth playbook that worked brilliantly in, say, 2022, it's actively destroying brand equity today.
Okay, let's unpack this core mechanism of that destruction because this is where my brain broke a little bit reading through your sources.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mind bender.
It really is. Because if human authenticity is the new premium, if that's the ultimate luxury good, then basic logic suggests brands should just be radically openly honest.
You'd think so. Just tell everyone what you're doing.
Right, just saying, hey everyone, we used an algorithm to help draft this email, just total transparency. But our academic sources reveal a massive twist here. They call it the transparency paradox.
It is a brilliant and honestly incredibly counterintuitive paradox. To understand why honesty suddenly backfires, we have to look under the hood of consumer psychology.
Specifically at the persuasion knowledge model, right? PKM.
Yes, the PKM. This is a foundational theory explaining how you react when you know you're being marketed to. Traditionally, this was just human to human.
Like when I read a billboard or an email from a brand.
Exactly. When you read a brand's message, your brain is subconsciously scanning for empathy, effort, shared experience. You know they have a motive, obviously, but you can read their emotional intent.
Right. I put up a tiny mental shield, but it's a shield designed to negotiate with another human being.
But the sources point out that when a brand slaps an AI-assisted disclaimer on their content, the brain triggers what the authors call synthetic persuasion knowledge.
Okay, wait. How does that actually alter our cognitive processing in the moment? Like, what is happening in the brain?
It activates what researchers call the machine heuristic. Your brain literally shuts off that empathy scanner.
It just shuts it down.
Completely. It concludes that because a machine generated the text, there is zero human intentionality behind it. You inherently assume there was less effort, less sincere care, and absolutely no genuine emotional stake.
Because a machine cannot care about you.
Exactly. A machine can't care, so your brain stops trying to connect with the message.
I hear you, but I'm struggling with the logic of the outcome here. Like, I play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go for it.
If I'm a brand trying to do the ethical thing, maybe the FTC is pushing me to disclose my AI use, the audience actually penalizes me for lacking human warmth. How does it make sense that telling the truth actively makes me less trustworthy?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it creates an illusion of transparency. Yes, regulators are pushing for disclosure, but psychologically, the consumer equates algorithmic authorship with brand apathy.
Brand apathy. Wow.
Yeah, when you disclose, the audience's focus shifts completely away from the actual message you're trying to convey. Instead, they start negatively evaluating you as a brand.
So they're thinking, like, if you don't care enough to actually write this for me, why should I care enough to read it?
Exactly,
Yeah.
let alone buy from you. Disclosure heavily dilutes persuasion.
So if transparency is ethically encouraged by regulators but psychologically punished by the consumer, marketing teams are just trapped.
It's a deeply uncomfortable dilemma.
This dilemma naturally leads to an operational question, though. Since blanket disclosure hurts the brand, exactly when should a brand disclose AI used and when should they stay silent?
Well, the academic findings point to a very clear dividing line, and it depends entirely on the functional goal of the content.
Okay, so what the content is actually trying to accomplish.
Right. Let's look at emotional relationship-building content first.
Mhm.
If you're publishing a vulnerable founder story or an apology letter to customers or an essay about your core values,
Things that rely entirely on human sincerity.
yes, for those, the disclosure penalty is absolutely devastating.
Because it insults the reader. It's like getting a deeply romantic, poetic anniversary card from your partner and then noticing a tiny watermark on the back that says, generated by ChatGPT.
Oh, that's brutal. But yeah, the romance instantly evaporates. For emotional connection, the human element is the entire product.
But the data shows a completely different reaction for informational stuff, right? Like a
Yes.
low-stakes utility content.
Totally different. If you're looking up technical specifications for a server architecture or a data overview or a step-by-step instruction manual for a blender, an AI disclaimer barely hurts at all.
I would actually argue that in some of those utility cases, it might even spike perceived accuracy. Like, we inherently trust machines with objective data over a human who might, make a math error.
That's a really good point. And obviously, for anything high stakes or legally regulated, like health claims or financial advice, the sources are clear that mandatory disclosure is non-negotiable.
Okay, so that is the strict operational baseline. But here's where it gets really interesting. Your stack of sources includes this massive research agenda currently unfolding.
Oh yeah, scholars are scrambling to figure out the deeper mechanics of this whole algorithmic aversion.
And there are these 5 major unknowns they're trying to solve right now. I want to drill into the first one because it feels the most urgent to me. The persuasion volume trade-off.
Right, finding the tipping point.
Yeah, the concept is basically finding the exact moment where pumping out massive amounts of AI content stops being efficient and just creates total audience fatigue. But why is that so incredibly hard to measure? Shouldn't a brand just, look at their unsubscribe rates?
Unsubscribe rates are a lagging indicator. By the time someone actually hits that button, brand fatigue set in months ago.
Oh, that makes sense.
The trade-off is difficult to quantify because AI output often masks its own damage. A brand might see a short-term algorithmic spike in impressions because, hey, they're posting 10 times a day now.
But underneath that, the long-term trust is completely hollowing out.
Exactly. We just don't yet know the mathematical formula for when volume destroys identity.
That connects perfectly to the second unknown they're studying, which is strategic disclosure. We know about the emotional versus informational divide, but what about the channel?
Channel context is huge.
Right. Does an AI disclosure on a hyper-fast, disposable TikTok video cause less psychological damage than, say, an AI disclosure in a deeply personal email newsletter?
Or how does culture change the reaction? Do different demographics possess a different baseline tolerance for synthetic persuasion? We simply don't have enough data on those contextual nuances yet.
The third area of research completely fascinated me: creating authenticity in fake media. Researchers are actively trying to isolate the exact microscopic design triggers that make an audience subconsciously feel a lack of human agency.
They're hunting for the specific linguistic or visual cues that make our brains just scream, robot!
Wait, like what kind of cues?
Maybe it's a certain structural symmetry or a specific cadence of adjectives. If we can isolate those triggers, brands can learn how to mathematically avoid the uncanny valley of marketing content.
Which brings us to the fourth question: creator appeal congruence. This is about matching the entity making the appeal, whether that's a human, a machine, or a hybrid, to the specific marketing strategy.
Right. Does a logical feature-based argument convert higher when delivered by an AI avatar?
While a brand purpose campaign completely collapses unless there's an actual human face attached.
It's testing the functional matching hypothesis in real time. And the final piece of this research puzzle is co-creation capabilities.
How do teams move from individuals just, playing around with language models on the side to building advanced, repeatable human AI workflows?
Workflows that actually protect the brand's unique voice at scale.
The literature describes this current state of affairs as a morally significant but psychologically doubtful policy choice. That phrase is heavy.
It really highlights the tension. The technology is moving exponentially faster than our psychological understanding of it.
And brands can't wait for a 5-year longitudinal study to conclude. They have to act today.
Because AI volume is too high and dilutes the brand, but pure manual labor is economically unviable, marketing teams have to pivot to a completely different operational model.
Right. And the sources outline an intense identity split happening right now between two modes of working, the output maximizer versus the perspective builder.
This framing is crucial. If you are an output maximizer, you're treating AI purely as a production accelerator. Your entire goal is volume.
More posts, more emails, more blogs.
Yes. You're competing on consistency with a machine that never sleeps,
Right.
which is a guaranteed path to total irrelevance because your content sounds like the median.
It's a race to the bottom. So the alternative is the perspective builder.
Exactly. This creator uses AI not to originate ideas, but to structure, accelerate, and stress test their own original thinking.
Mm.
The perspective always comes first, the production comes second.
The analogy from the Dan Coe text in your notes really anchors this concept. It's the film director analogy.
The Spielberg comparison.
Yeah. Think about Steven Spielberg. He does not manually operate the boom mic. He doesn't personally adjust the lighting rigs. And he usually isn't physically holding the camera.
But when you watch Jurassic Park, it is unmistakably a Spielberg film.
Why? Because he provides the vision, the direction, the taste, and the specific weirdness of his perspective. The labor is distributed, but the taste is uniquely his. In the AI era, creators have to stop being laborers and become content directors.
That distinction between labor and direction is the bedrock of what the research calls the human-in-the-loop operating model. This isn't just a theory. It is a highly specific 5-step pipeline for survival.
I was looking closely at the first step of this pipeline, the strategy brief. And what stands out is that it requires absolutely zero AI.
None at all.
It must be composed entirely by a human. That makes total sense, because an algorithm cannot invent a brand's lived experience or its soul. The human sets the destination.
Right.
But where I got a bit hung up in the reading was step 2, generation. The sources say generation is accelerated by AI, but you use an idea museum. How does handing the AI an idea museum differ from what an output maximizer does with a standard prompt?
Well, a standard prompt asks the AI to pull from its vast generic training data. Again, the median of the internet. An idea museum is a closed-loop, highly curated library of your brand's past hits, your proprietary frameworks, your best-performing emails, and your specific tone guidelines.
Oh, I see. So when you prompt the AI, you force it to generate options using exclusively your own raw materials.
Exactly. You are confining the generation strictly to your unique creative universe.
So you aren't just telling the crew to make a movie. You're handing them Spielberg's actual script, visual notes, and storyboards.
Perfect analogy.
Mm.
Then comes step 3, selection and molding, which is executed purely by humans again. This is where you inject the friction back into the content.
Because AI naturally wants to smooth out the edges of communication, right? To make it perfectly acceptable to the widest possible audience.
Yes, and the human director's job is to ruthlessly edit those generated options, putting the spikes, the strong opinions, and the unique voice back into the text. You have to rough it up a bit.
Now, I want to push back on step 4, validation. The research insists we need human analysis combined with programmatic checks for bias, legal compliance, and fact-checking.
It's a critical step.
But if we have to painstakingly validate everything the AI does to ensure it hasn't, hallucinated a statistic, aren't we just creating a massive new bottleneck? Doesn't that kill the efficiency we were promised by the technology in the first place?
It is absolutely a bottleneck, but it's an intentional and necessary one.
How so?
Because the efficiency gain of this workflow isn't in bypassing validation. The gain is in the speed of generating a dozen high-quality structural variations in seconds during step 2. The validation step is pure risk mitigation.
Ah,
A
okay.
hallucinated statistic or a brand safety violation will destroy your audience's trust infinitely faster than a slow production cycle will.
That's a very fair point. Trust is incredibly fragile. And then step 5 is the learning process, taking what worked and what failed from this cycle and feeding it back into your idea museum to refine the next round.
And by committing to that workflow, the sources argue you build a human moat.
A human mode. I love that term.
In a sea of synthetic media, radical authenticity is your only defensible position. A human moat means showing the messy behind the scenes. It's empowering your actual employees to be the face of your brand because people trust a real engineer talking about a product far more than a faceless corporate social account.
It also means moving away from the massive algorithmic public squares like traditional social media and building gated micro-communities, right?
Yeah, creating an exclusive Discord server or a private forum where peer-to-peer trust is incredibly high.
Mhm.
And AI simply cannot replicate the messy, genuine dynamic of a human community.
Which raises an important question about how we measure all of this. If we're abandoning the output maximizer approach, our old dashboards are effectively broken.
Completely broken. We cannot rely on raw traffic volume if that traffic actively equates our brand with AI slop.
Right. If a million people see your post, but all a million people immediately recognize it as synthetic and lose respect for you, that high impression count is actually a massive negative. So how do we actually prove this perspective builder approach is working?
Alongside traditional marketing performance data, teams must radically pivot to measuring the quality of engagement. You cannot trade credibility for reach. And the research highlights 3 specific trust metrics that are crucial in this new era. The first is saves.
I find this metric so fascinating. A simple like on a post is largely an algorithmic reflex.
Yeah, we just tap it without thinking.
But a save or a bookmark is a profound behavioral commitment. It means the perspective builder approach works so well that the content was deeply resonant, and the user wants to store it in their own personal architecture to return to later.
It proves you offered unique utility, not just passing entertainment. The second metric is time on content.
Proving they're actually reading.
Exactly. In an era of infinite scrolling and zero-click searches, proving that your audience is actively dwelling on your page is a massive signal. If they are reading your long-form analysis to the end or watching your video all the way through, you've proven they aren't just bouncing off generic noise. They are engaged with your specific mind.
Dwelling is the new clicking. If they stay, it means you've successfully escaped the uncanny valley. And the third piece is credibility surveys.
Yes. You literally have to directly poll your audience.
You just ask them to rate the authenticity and trustworthiness of your brand's messaging.
Yep. But you don't look at those survey scores in a vacuum. You map them against your internal production volume and your error rates.
Oh, always.
If your output doubles because of AI integration, but your credibility surveys plummet and customer complaints tick upward, your human-in-the-loop system is failing. You are gaining efficiency, but actively bankrupting your brand equity. You must measure trust, not just traffic.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap the incredible journey we've just been on through your sources. We started with the realization that because AI has made content production essentially free, genuine human perspective is the only scarce asset left in the digital economy.
And we dissected the persuasion knowledge model and the transparency paradox, learning that blanket disclosure of AI use can actually trigger the machine heuristic and hurt your brand's trust, especially for emotional content.
We debated the massive unknowns of the academic research agenda, from the persuasion volume trade-off to finding the specific design triggers of fake media. We broke down the vital shift from being an output maximizer to a perspective builder becoming a content director like Spielberg.
And we outlined the 5-step human-in-the-loop pipeline to protect your unique voice, ensuring you measure actual trust through behavioral commitments like saves and time on content.
It is a complete paradigm shift in how we value information, which leaves us with a final, lingering idea drawn from the margins of your sources to really mull over.
Yeah, think about this. In a future, which is effectively right now, where machines can instantly generate polished, flawless, perfectly reasonable, and perfectly grammatical content, what if the most valuable, highly prized asset you own is actually your imperfections?
Wow.
What if the friction, the weirdness, and the highly specific, unedited flaws of your own human thought become the ultimate luxury good in the digital economy?
When perfection is ubiquitous and entirely free, the uniquely human fingerprint of imperfection becomes priceless. That is such a powerful lens. Thank you so much for sending us this stack of sources and joining us on this deep dive. To everyone listening, keep directing your content, keep protecting your human moat, and whatever you build next, make sure you keep bringing your delightfully imperfect human perspective to it.
Thanks for listening. We create new episodes every week and post on Thursdays. Consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell so that you're alerted when the next podcast goes live. See you next week.